Black receptionist discovers lonely billionaire at night shift. What she did next healed his heart. I wasn't supposed to find anyone in the lobby at 2 a.m., but there he was, sitting in the shadows, his suit immaculate, his eyes destroyed. Naomi Carter had worked the graveyard shift long enough to believe she had seen it all: insomniacs wandering in for directions, drunks arguing with the air security officers half asleep at their posts. But that night, the silence of the marble-floored lobby was broken not by chaos, but by stillness. A man sat slouched on the leather couch near the glass wall, the lights from the city skyline painting him in fractured neon counter. The fluorescent clock above Naomi Carter's desk ticked past 1:47 a.m. The building breathed in silence. For Naomi, the night shift was both a curse and a strange sort of peace. The world slept while she kept watch. She had memorized every echo in the lobby, every flicker of the security cameras, every hum of the vending machine in the break room. Nothing ever happened. Nothing ever changed. Until tonight, a shadow stretched across the far end of the lobby. She noticed it too late, a figure seated on the leather couch beneath the tall glass windows. He hadn't come through the front doors. She would have seen him. It was as if he had been there all along, waiting in the folds of silence. Naomi's pulse quickened. Her first instinct was procedural strangers at 2 a.m. did not belong in restricted buildings. She reached for the phone, then stopped. Something in the way he sat, shoulders hunched, head bowed, hands clasped tightly together, made her hesitate. "Sir," her voice echoed across the marble. The man didn't move. The lights outside threw a fractured glow on his face, sharp cheekbones, dark circles under his eyes, a tie loosened carelessly as though he'd fought it in frustration. Naomi took a cautious step forward. "This lobby is closed after midnight. Are you lost?" At last he lifted his head. Their eyes met, and Naomi felt a jolt. His eyes weren't wild nor threatening. They were hollow, tired, the kind of tired that no sleep could fix. "I know it's closed," he said, finally, voice low and calm. "I just needed somewhere quiet." Naomi's hand hovered near her hip, halfway between the phone and her own curiosity. She studied him. His suit was finely tailored, yet wrinkled with wear. His shoes shone, but the leather was scuffed. A gold watch gleamed faintly on his wrist, too polished for a man who claimed to be wandering. "You can't just sit here," Naomi said, softer than she intended. "There are rules." He smiled faintly, not with humor, but with defeat. "Then I suppose you'll have to call someone. I won't fight it." The way he said it, steady, resigned, made Naomi freeze. He wasn't defiant. He wasn't begging. He was simply empty. A man so used to carrying his weight that even being thrown out at 2 a.m. felt ordinary. Something inside her twisted. Naomi exhaled slowly. Or she said, choosing her words with care, "I could bring you tea. You look like you haven't had a moment of rest in weeks." His head turned sharply, surprise flickering in his eyes. "Tea? Yes," Naomi replied, stepping closer. "Chamomile. It's all I've got back there. It won't fix much, but it might fix tonight." He blinked as though unsure whether to laugh or refuse. But the silence between them stretched, and in that silence Naomi realized he wasn't going to say no. She gave a small nod, then turned on her heel, disappearing into the break room behind the desk. The tea that became a ritual. The following night, Naomi half expected the lobby to be as it always was, silent, sterile, predictable. She had convinced herself that the stranger, Alexander, had been a one-time apparition. A man swallowed by grief drifting through her lobby, before returning to wherever men like him belonged. But when the clock slid past midnight, the sound of soft footsteps echoed across the marble floor. Naomi glanced up. There he was again, Alexander Ward, billionaire, recluse, a man who could buy entire buildings yet chose to sit in hers at ungodly hours, staring at nothing. He didn't look at her at first. He moved with quiet assurance, taking the same seat by the glass wall, folding into it like a man returning to a confessional booth. Naomi's chest tightened. She had made a choice the night before to give tea instead of dismissal. Now she realized that choice had tethered them to a strange silent rhythm neither of them had asked for. Without a word, she rose from her desk and walked into the break room. Her hands didn't hesitate this time. The kettle hissed, the bag steeped, the chipped mug filled with steam. When she placed it in front of him, Alexander looked up, the faintest flicker of gratitude in his eyes. "You remembered," he murmured. Naomi tilted her head. "Chamomile doesn't forget." He let out a breath that almost resembled a laugh, but his smile faded as quickly as it came. He cradled the cup, staring into the steam like it was safer than looking at her. For several minutes they sat in near silence. Naomi leaned back against the opposite couch, arms crossed. Alexander sipped slowly, shoulders loosening with every swallow. Finally, Naomi broke the quiet. "You didn't answer my question yesterday." He lifted his eyes. "Which question? Why here? Why this lobby? You could disappear anywhere, but you came to a place with bright lights and cameras. That's not nothing." Alexander's gaze dropped again. His thumb traced the rim of the mug. "Because here no one asks questions, and no one knows me." Naomi gave a soft scoff. "You think a man in a $1,000 suit can walk around unnoticed? That's wishful thinking." His mouth twitched. "And yet, you didn't recognize me until I said my name." She flushed slightly, but didn't back down. "Fair enough. But that doesn't explain why you're here every night like a ghost." He didn't answer right away. Instead, he finished his tea in silence, set the mug down carefully, and leaned back into the couch. His expression shifted as though some internal war raged behind his eyes. Naomi didn't push. She wasn't used to billionaires, but she knew people. People cracked open only when they felt safe. Forcing never worked. So she tried something else. "You know," she said lightly, "this isn't a 5-star hotel. I'm not bringing you snacks and extra pillows. Tea is the limit." That earned her a genuine smile. Brief, the confession of silence. The third night, the lobby seemed to expect him. Naomi felt it in the air before the doors swished. The marble held its breath. The security monitors whispered static. Somewhere in the building, a ventilation duct clicked like a metronome counting down. He came the way he always did now, without theater. No entourage. No coat slung over an arm by someone else. Just Alexander Ward in a suit that looked tired of pretending it didn't crease. "Evening," Naomi said, as if it were the most ordinary hour in the world. He nodded, that small grave tilt that lived halfway between apology and thanks. Same couch, same posture. Hands clasped like he was trying to hold himself together. She made the tea without asking. Chamomile. The chipped mug she had quietly adopted as his. A napkin folded twice. She set the tray down, then sat across from him on the opposite couch, one foot tucked under the other, the way she did when she needed to listen without flinching. Tonight, he didn't reach for the cup right away. He watched the steam. "Do you ever notice," he said, voice low, "how places remember things?" Naomi blinked. Places, rooms, buildings. His gaze moved across the lobby. By day, this is all brisk shoes and polished lies. At night, it exhales. It forgets what we forced it to be. She took that in. And you, he considered. I forget too. For an hour. He lifted the mug, warming his hands. Then it catches up. What does the fact of me? He said it without arrogance, as if Alexander Ward were a weather system that followed him wherever he went, even into a quiet lobby at 2 in the morning. Naomi waited. He sipped, set the mug down, exhaled. My father died in January. The sentence landed without decoration. He was the last person who spoke to me like I was someone's son first. I'm sorry, Naomi said. Not the kind that ends a conversation, the kind that opens one. He wasn't easy, Alexander added, almost a reflex. But he was anchor. Loud, impossible. An anchor all the same. His mouth pulled into something that wasn't a smile. The board sent flowers the size of a door. Reporters sent questions. I sent answers. He tapped the mug with a knuckle. None of it made a dent. Naomi said nothing. He kept going. And in February, he continued, we called off a wedding. A pause. Quietly. As quietly as anything in my life can be. She is a good person. I am not a simple man. Our lives didn't match at the seams. His jaw ticked. The stock dipped 2 points when the rumor hit. Investors were more worried about the optics than the grief. Nothing like watching your life translated into the night of storms. The rain arrived before midnight. It drummed against the glass facade of the lobby in hard, relentless sheets, making the city lights smear into watercolor streaks. Naomi leaned back in her chair, tapping a pen against the blotter, staring at the way water turned the skyline into something softer, almost merciful. She thought maybe tonight he wouldn't come. Even billionaires weren't immune to rain. But at 12:37 a.m., she heard it, the quiet swish of the revolving door, the whisper of wet shoes on marble. Alexander Ward. His suit was damp at the shoulders, his hair darker with rain, as if he hadn't cared enough to shield himself. Yet his posture was the same, controlled, composed, a man pretending storms never touched him. Naomi grabbed a towel from the utility closet, and without ceremony pressed it into his hands. You'll ruin the leather if you sit like that. He accepted it wordlessly, blotting his hair and then his hands. His movements were slow, almost reverent, as if he hadn't been given something so ordinary in a very long time. Storm caught me, he said at last. Naomi raised a brow. Storms don't catch billionaires. They have drivers, umbrellas, lobbies, with underground parking. So why walk through the rain? He didn't answer immediately. He set the towel aside, and exhaled. The tea ritual had already begun inside Naomi's hands. The kettle hissed in the break room before he even asked. When she returned with the mug, he took it with both hands, warming himself against the ceramic. His eyes remained fixed on the rain-smeared city. I needed to feel it, he said finally. Naomi blinked. The rain, yes. His voice was low. I've spent too long in climate-controlled glass towers, eating meals prepared by hands I'll never see smiling in photographs staged to look candid. I've lived years without knowing what cold feels like on my skin. Tonight, I wanted to remember. She studied him, the way his gaze softened as he watched droplets chase each other down the window. A man who could command storms of industry, choosing instead to be humbled by weather. You ever stand in rain as a kid? He asked suddenly, his voice shifting as though he'd surprised himself. All the time, Naomi said. Our street flooded whenever the drains clogged. My brother and I used to make paper boats and race them until the neighbors yelled. A small, genuine smile broke across Alexander's face. I used to do that, except my father hated it. said wet shoes meant irresponsibility. He'd punish me. But for those 5 minutes in the rain, I was free. His smile faltered. When you grow up, you learn to dry off quickly, to make excuses for why you were late, why your hair is damp. You forget the joy part. Naomi tilted her head. And tonight, you wanted the joy part back. Or at least the reminder that I'm not untouchable, he admitted. The rain doesn't care who you are. It soaks everyone the same. For a while, they both listened to the rhythm. The lobby became its own world storm, outside warmth, inside two people. The early arrival. Naomi had begun to expect him at 12:30. It was their strange rhythm now, the quiet hour when the rest of the city surrendered to sleep, and the lobby of her building became their refuge. But on the fifth night, he arrived early. The revolving door whispered open just after 11 p.m., catching her mid-yawn behind the reception desk. She blinked at the figure approaching, surprised, almost startled. "Either I'm hallucinating," Naomi said, straightening in her chair, "or you've broken your own schedule." Alexander Ward smiled faintly, the corners of his mouth betraying something that almost looked mischievous. The storm made me impatient. Tonight, I didn't want to wait. It was the first time she had seen him confess to wanting anything. The honesty disarmed her more than his fortune ever could. Naomi rose automatically, moving to the break room. The kettle hissed, the bag steeped, the mug warmed. By now it was instinct, almost muscle memory, the way her hands performed the ritual before her mind had caught up. When she placed the mug before him, he accepted it with a nod. "Do you ever feel like some nights move faster than others?" Naomi tilted her head. "Time's a liar. Sometimes it drags, sometimes it cheats. The trick is not letting it own you." He studied her. "You talk like you've been stolen from before." Her eyes flickered, caught. "Maybe." She sank into the couch opposite. "But we're not trading tragedies tonight. Not unless you're ready to spend." He leaned back, cup cradled in his hands. "Maybe I am." For a long stretch, the lobby filled with nothing but the hum of lights and the faint sigh of the storm still lingering outside. Naomi thought he'd let the conversation drop, but then his voice came low, deliberate. "I told you my father was loud. What I didn't tell you is that he was also afraid. Afraid of weakness. Afraid of me becoming soft." He exhaled sharply. "The night before he died, he left me a voicemail. 6 seconds. Just 6. It said, 'You'll be fine without me.' That was it." Naomi's chest tightened. "And were you?" Alexander's jaw clenched. "No. But I became fine at pretending." She let silence settle for a beat before speaking. "Pretending is exhausting." "It is," he agreed, staring into the steam. "That's why I come here. With you, I don't have to. For once, I can sit down and not perform." The admission slipped into the room like a fragile thing, and Naomi felt it land between them. She looked at him not as Alexander Ward Billionaire, but as a man unraveling quietly, desperate for someplace safe to put the pieces. "You ever wonder," she said softly, "if maybe people would still accept you, even if you stopped pretending?" He gave a humorless chuckle. "Acceptance is currency, and people trade it faster than stocks. One wrong headline, and the world decides you're done." Naomi tilted her head, studying him. "Then maybe you're looking in the wrong world." He glanced up at her, eyes searching as though she'd said something no one else dared. The tea cooled between them. The city lights blinked on glass like 1,000 witnesses until dawn. The sixth night changed everything. Naomi arrived early, her bag still heavy with second-hand paperbacks, her hair tied back in a knot that threatened to fall loose before midnight. She didn't admit it to herself, but she felt it in her pulse, an expectation that the quiet lobby was no longer hers alone. At 11:15, the revolving doors whispered and Alexander Ward stepped inside. This time, he wasn't carrying the storm. He was carrying weariness. His tie was already loosened, his shoulders bowed. It was as though the skyscraper above had poured its entire weight into him. "You're early," Naomi said, hiding her surprise with a half-smile. He gave a small shrug, his eyes tired, but lighter than she'd seen before. "Meetings ended. I didn't want to go home." Or she teased, "You've discovered tea addiction." A faint grin tugged at his mouth. "Maybe it's that." She rose without further comment, the kettle hissing in rhythm with her heartbeat. When she brought the mugs out, she noticed something. He was sitting differently, not on the edge of the couch, not straight-backed, in control. He'd leaned into the corner cushion, jacket unbuttoned as though giving himself permission to belong. Naomi set the tea down. "Careful, you'll wrinkle that very expensive suit." Alexander exhaled through a laugh low and warm. "For once, I don't care." She sat opposite him, crossing one leg over the other, studying the way his fingers curled around the mug. For a while they drank in silence, the kind of silence that didn't demand filling. Outside, the city glowed, rain still clinging to the streets like memory. Then Alexander spoke, his voice quieter than usual. "Do you know what I hate most about wealth?" Naomi tilted her head. "The taxes." He chuckled. "The assumption. People assume that money makes grief lighter, that it cushions heartbreak. But it doesn't. It amplifies it. People stop asking if you're okay. They just measure how your misery affects the market." Her eyes softened. "And what about you? Do you ask yourself if you're okay?" He looked down, thumb circling the rim of the mug. "Not often, because I'm afraid of the answer." Naomi leaned back, studying him. "Maybe you don't need to be okay. Maybe you just need to be honest." The words settled between them like a dare. Alexander's gaze lifted, holding hers. For a moment, Naomi thought he might retreat, cloak himself in silence again. But instead, he exhaled and leaned forward. "When I called off the engagement," people whispered, "they said I'd ruined a good woman's life. They weren't wrong. She deserved better than a man living half in shadows. But the truth is, I couldn't stand the thought of giving her a life built on appearances. I couldn't keep pretending love is just another contract." Naomi felt her throat tighten. "So you let her go?" His jaw tightened. "I let her go. And in doing so, I realized I don't know if I've ever really been loved for myself, or if I've ever allowed anyone to." Beyond the lobby. The next night, Naomi expected the familiar, the revolving door at midnight, the tea, the silence wrapped around confessions. But Alexander didn't come. By 12:45, the lobby felt larger than usual, the marble echoing each tick of the clock. Naomi tried to focus on her paperback, but her eyes kept lifting to the doors. At 1:10, she sighed, closing the book. Maybe it was over. Maybe he had finally realized this midnight ritual was foolish, reckless. Then her phone buzzed. A number she didn't recognize. "Naomi, it's Alexander." Her breath caught. His voice, low but softer than usual, carried through the line. "I'm not in the lobby tonight. I didn't want you to think I forgot." Naomi hesitated. "So where are you?" A pause. "Outside." "Would you come out?" The request startled her. Protocol screamed no. She was on shift. She was the receptionist. She was not supposed to abandon her desk for a man who lived in magazine covers. And yet, her feet moved before her reason could stop them. Outside, the rain had cleared, leaving the air sharp and clean. A sleek black car idled by the curb. Alexander leaned against it, No jacket, just a simple shirt sleeves rolled. For the first time, he didn't look like a billionaire. He looked like a man waiting. Naomi crossed her arms, raising a brow. Breaking into my night isn't part of our deal. He smiled faintly. Maybe I want to renegotiate. Her heart gave a traitorous kick. What exactly are you proposing, Mr. Ward? He gestured to the car. A drive. No titles. No business. Just two people chasing the city before it wakes. Every nerve in Naomi told her this was dangerous. That stepping beyond the glass lobby meant stepping into something she couldn't control. But then she saw it. That same spark in his eyes she'd glimpsed in the storm. A man desperate to live, not just exist. She exhaled. 1 hour, and I'm not making the tea this time. His smile widened. Deal. The city at 2 a.m. was another universe. Streets stretched, empty stoplights blinked like forgotten sentinels. The car hummed low as Alexander drove with surprising ease, not the stiff control she expected. His tie was gone, his collar undone. He looked free. They passed the river first. Bridges arched in silence, the water glinting silver under scattered moonlight. Naomi leaned her head against the window, watching. You know, she murmured, most people would kill to see the city from this angle. Empty. Almost forgiving. Alexander glanced at her. Most people don't bother to look. The car slowed as they reached a stretch lined with old diners and neon signs. He pulled over abruptly. Naomi shot him a wary look. Coffee, he explained. Real coffee. Not boardroom catering. Not gourmet blends in porcelain. Just whatever's brewing at 2 a.m. in a diner that's seen better days. Inside the diner smelled of fried onions and burnt espresso. Naomi, the invitation. Naomi tried to tell herself nothing had changed after that drive. That the late-night coffee, the neon-drenched booth, the way Alexander had looked at her, none of it mattered. But the truth clung to her, like the smell of the diner's grease-stained air. Something had shifted. The following night, the lobby was too quiet. Midnight came and went. 12:45. 1:10. Naomi tried not to watch the doors. She stacked papers. She straightened pens. She reread the same page of her book 3 times. At 1:30, the revolving doors finally spun. Alexander entered without his usual armor. No suit jacket, no polished shoes. Just a dark sweater sleeves pushed to his elbows, hair slightly tousled, as if he'd fought with sleep and lost. You're late, Naomi said, though her voice betrayed more relief than reprimand. He smirked faintly. Testing to see if you'd miss me. She rolled her eyes, hiding the smile tugging at her mouth. You're insufferable. And yet, you're still here. She pretended to busy herself with the kettle, though her hands trembled slightly as she poured. When she set the mug before him, he didn't reach for it. Instead, he leaned forward, elbows on his knees, gaze steady. Naomi, he said quietly, come with me tomorrow night. Her brows furrowed. Come where? My world. Not the headlines, not the skyscrapers. The real places, the ones I don't show anyone. I want you to see who I am when no one's watching. Naomi froze. Her mind split into warnings. He's your boss's boss's boss. This is madness. This is a story that doesn't end well. But her chest betrayed her, tightening with something closer to longing than fear. Alexander, she began. Don't say no yet, he interrupted gently. Just think. You've given me nights I didn't know I needed. Let me give you one in return. His eyes held hers unflinching, and she realized this wasn't seduction, it was surrender. The next night, Naomi stood outside the lobby, coat pulled tight, city lights stretching endless above her. She told herself 100 times to walk away, that she wasn't this woman, that she didn't follow billionaires into unknown shadows. And then the black car pulled up. Alexander stepped out, not in silk or tailored armor, but in the same dark sweater, his expression careful, almost tentative. "You came," he said softly. She exhaled, half a laugh, half a tremor. "I'm still not sure why." "Maybe because you want to know if I'm worth it," he murmured. The car slipped through the city like a secret. But instead of the penthouse towers, Naomi expected Alexander drove toward the edges, where the lights dimmed, where the buildings grew older, where the city's noise thinned into silence.